Gotta admit, this one shocked me the most. Now, in the comments, what's the one big problem every caster's having in these tests? If you haven't watched them, there's a playlist set up on the main channel, go and check it out. But the videos coming up that I've actually thoroughly tested now is all 3 Hunter specs, all 3 Warlock specs, all 3 Mage specs. We're gonna look at tank and healer comparisons as well, but they'll come a little bit later. But if you've already typed out what the one problem is that all of these casters have, sorry, there's a plane going over. It's mana and going far too fast. But the Fire Mage is literally the complete opposite. You can just pump forever. I went for about 5 to 6 minutes at one point without using a mana gem, without dipping under 70% mana. It's just absolutely insane. But I did change the spec up a little bit, so that was actually taking Arcane Concentration, getting a few points in it anyway, which just wasn't needed. But to be fair, there's not that many places you can put it anyway, unless you're going to put some more in the Fire Tree just to get some AoE. But this is what the talents look like anyway, just working our way down. We got all of the important talents, but there's some big ones like the mana return on crit, and we are critting a lot. And don't get me wrong, this is in a phase 5 BIS setup, so it's probably not even that well optimized. You could optimize this more in the pre-patch with different bits of gear, but it's still actually very, very good, and the one I'm most excited about to show you. Had to come in, it was getting too hot out there, never mind the noise. We got all of our talents, including Improved Fireball, Burning Soul, Master of Elements, which is a very important one. This is what gives us 30% mana back when we critically strike. We got Playing with Fire, Firepower, Combustion, Pyromaniac for that 3% additional chance to crit, Empowered Fire, which increases the damage of your Fireball, Frost Firebolt, and Pyroblast. One thing worth mentioning is Molten Fury, which increases the damage of all spells against targets with less than 35% health. We're not going to benefit from that on the dummy, and this is the problem when we tested the Warlock, is Affliction and Demonology both have a really heavy reliance on that execute phase, or the lower the health of the mob, the better, basically. So the damage of fire will go up, obviously, because 35% health, that's not even execute range. Execute range is typically known as 20% or below, isn't it? So 35% health is a decent amount of time to start ramping that damage up with the additional 12%, but on the dummy, we're not going to benefit from that. But we took all the important talents, Burnout all the way down to Living Bomb, and then when it came to the rest of the talents, it was quite difficult to choose. We went into Arcane Focus so we could get the chance to hit, and it reduces the mana cost of arcane spells, which is neither in or there really. But we can't get deep enough into Frost, for example, to be able to get Icy Veins, so we've had to just carry on going down in Arcane and just get some points in Arcane Concentration. But if you don't need the points in Arcane Concentration, like I said, we're just not having mana problems, then you might be better off just putting some extra points in Fire, picking up Dragon's Breath. You're not going to need Arcane Concentration, that's the point. We had a look at the Glyphs, and the Glyphs were pretty disappointing because the main ones that we would want to use are not available yet. So Glyph of Fireball comes from Northrend Inscription Research, which we're not going to have any access to whatsoever. Glyph of Living Bomb is from a book of Glyph Mastery, and even Glyph of Molten Armor is from Northrend Inscription Research. So we had to just go with a couple of basic ones that are not really going to benefit us in the slightest. So we just went with Glyph of Scorch and Glyph of Mana Gem. But on the basis I've already said, we definitely don't have mana issues. There's not really that much point in Glyph of Mana Gem, if I'm completely honest. You could pick something else up, but there's nothing that's going to give you any DPS gain. So we whacked on full Phase 5 BIS as according to Wowhead. If you haven't seen any of the other videos, is we do it in full Phase 5 BIS as according to Wowhead. So we're using the same resource for every single spec. We aren't making any changes. I thought I'd put this out here. I've never mentioned it in any other videos, but we're not making any changes that would sort of benefit you in the pre-patch. So if you know, oh, well, haste is going to be better in the pre-patch than crit, or crit's going to be better than haste, or you're not going to need this enchant anymore, this enchant becomes better. Obviously, we're not doing any of that. We're purely just going from Wowhead's Phase 5 BIS and exactly how that's set up. So you could optimize these further and get even more damage out of them, of course, or you could just be better at them than I am and get more damage out of them. But we do it on a level 70 target dummy with 6,792 armor, only self-buffed with no consumables, and obviously this is a 3.3.5 state, so it's basically like being in Wrath of the Lich King at level 70 with full BIS. We try and go for about 3 minutes at a time and then try various different setups, either setups of talents or different rotations. So let's get straight into that first. So for the Mage, we've done 2 different types of rotations. Tried doing just Scorch spam and not using Fireball at all. Didn't really change too much. It was a bit of a DPS loss, to be honest, but watching the mana absolutely never move was quite interesting. Then we just tried a traditional Fireball rotation. So this would be using Combustion on cooldown, keeping Living Bomb on the target at all times, doing 1 Scorch every like 30 seconds just to keep the debuff up. The rest of the time you're just spamming Fireball, waiting for 2 crits in a row so you can fire off an instant cast Pyroblast, and just rinse and repeat. That's it the whole way through. Mana was not an issue, and we was hovering around 2.4 to 2.5k most of the time, which in terms of sustained DPS. That's actually incredible. So if we think back to some of the other tests we've done, Boomy, Ellie Shaman, yeah, they're doing 3k, that's great, but they've not got any execute sort of damage increase. You have, at 35%, you're going to start doing 12% more damage. They don't do that, and they struggle for mana. They go pretty much at the 2-minute mark. You literally, and I'm not exaggerating, you could probably DPS forever as a fire mage and never need to worry about mana in this gear. I really did want to just push it to the limits and see if I could go for like 30 minutes or something, but as long as you use a mana gem every time you're at like 50%, I never evocated once. I literally did not need to use evocation once. That's how like chill it is, and I rarely went under sort of 50% mana, and the damage it was doing is fantastic. And I've got to be honest, in terms of fun testing a character, this was the most fun out of every class and spec that I've tested, to the point where I'm even considering my first character during the pre-patch on the fresh server that I'm going on being a mage, and I'm not even kidding. You can find that out in the video that's coming out probably today or tomorrow about my plans basically for fresh. When we was using the Scorch rotation, it was doing about 2.2k ish, and the Fireball rotation was doing sort of 2.4 to 2.5. Sometimes, you know, you get a couple of big crits in a row and then you're firing out these instant cast Pyroblasts, which is just so satisfying to see, by the way. You could spike anywhere up to about 3k, but we don't want to go by spike damage here. We want to go for long sustained damage, and I don't think we've done a class so far that could sustain 2.4 to 2.5k for this length of time. You know, the Rep Paladin done about 2.4k, that would go home. The Rogues and the Warriors, they can do 2.4k, but you know, this sustained 2.4 to 2.5k from a Fire Mage is probably more reliable, I want to say. The Boomy and the Ellie Shaman would be by the time you even reach about 70% mana. It is just honestly a fantastic spec to play during the pre-patch. Spoiler alert, really, it's the highest of the DPS that I can pull out of the 3 specs. So Arcane will be coming and Frost will be coming. Obviously Frost is very disappointing, don't get me wrong, and Arcane is great. Arcane's great for what it is, front loading that damage, but it just hasn't got the longevity, obviously. If they're really short bursty fights, obviously yeah, Arcane is going to absolutely win, but if it starts to become time sensitive, Fire's probably better overall. In terms of damage breakdown, you can see the vast majority of your damage is going to come from Fireball, Ignite is in second, and then it's Pyroblast. Living Bomb looks like it's not doing a great deal, and I'll be completely honest with you, there was an attempt where I left Living Bomb out altogether, but the amount of instant cast procs we would get for our Pyroblast dropped considerably, because when that blows up, if it blows up and crits at the same time your Fireball's critting, that's 2 crits, that's boom, you're now going to be able to do your instant cast Pyroblast. So it just synergizes well in the rotation, even though it doesn't look like it's doing a great deal of damage. Overall, mages, I would say you're in a really good place, and you're really going to enjoy that 4, or hopefully 4 week pre-patch when it eventually comes. The damage is great. It's probably the most fun spec that I've played so far, to the point where I'm considering Mage in Wrath of the Lich King, and no one will be able to last longer than you, other than, alright, Warriors and Rogues, people who haven't got mana, that's fine. But anyway, what does that do for our leaderboard? Well, we're going to slot it in at 2.5k, so it's going to be on par with the Mutilate Rogue, but still below the Boomy and the Ellie Shaman. But as I say, honestly, if I could go for sort of time spent DPSing, mana efficiency, and the amount of damage and roll that all into one nice little bundle, I put Mage on top. The next ones to come are Hunter, all 3 specs, which honestly are very disappointing. I'm just putting it out there now, not the most impressive thing that I've seen. And all 3 Warlock specs. Actually, I'll give you a spoiler, Destruction is actually pumping. So until then, peace out, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Roll the outro.
There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes, everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name, and you get access to members only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.